Hello, YouTube and the internet.
Uh,
This is a special episode of Plays in Theory, which will go up on the Theory Please podcast. This is being live streamed from the Theory Please channel, and it will be uploaded later to the Plays in Theory channel, which we're trying to get more people to go and subscribe to. So we will be sharing that channel after this. But first of all, let's introduce everyone else. So I'm Dave or Theory. I use Dave pronouns primarily. Yeah, I'm really excited that Ryan's able to join us for the first time.
Hey, I'm Ryan Banks. I am currently a student at Boise State studying political science, and I'm just really happy to be on in this discussion today. So thank you, Blaze and Theory, for having me.
Sweet. I'm Blaze. What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us again today. Hopefully, we'll be able to talk about some things that will be really important, that something we may not have thought about before as well. So just sit back, relax. Don't be afraid to get involved in the conversation. We got the chat room open. So if you got some questions, put them in there and we'll get a chance to get through them and put them up on the air for you so we can get your questions answered.
Yes. Oh, and by the way, Ryan, I had to mute you for a moment because there was so much wind. But now that you're in a car, you can probably unmute yourself. But as Kali is saying in the chat right now, she was like, "Hey, it's nice to see you both, but we can't hear anything because there's all that wind." So.
Okay, yeah, I just got in the car, so hopefully we should be all good for right now.
All right. Right.
Wow, it sounds like those new cars are wind-free.
Yeah.
Hey, before we get started, what's up, Kali? Thought I'd say what's up.
Yeah, I've done a few live streams recently, and Kali missed them, and I missed Kali, so it's good to see you. Happy you're able to join us this time. We've also got Mel D and Rob Chrysler in the chat. Welcome, y'all.
What? That's Rob. Showtime, Rob.
That's
all
Rob.
Right. There you go.
All right.
So where do we begin?
Well, there's a lot going on here. So, we could first of all talk about what kind of a week we're having. You know, we don't have to dive straight into talking about Candace Owens and Jesse Lee Peterson and all of them. Let's talk a little bit about who we are and what we're up to and stuff like that.
All right, lead the way.
Well, so I'm moving.
I'm
getting out of here. I'm moving. About to move to North Idaho for 2.5 weeks, and then I'll be moving to California for a few months to a year, because my work it allows me to be mobile, and so I'm going to go help my brother with some things over there. So that's exciting. I spent the last few days setting up for my big move, and I'm just really happy that we got to touch base like one time in the flesh before parting, before I leave. So
yeah, and what it's kind of sad about this is leading back to the same trend that happens usually when people of color graduate from Boise State. They get the hell out of here. Here, Theory just graduated, and now they're getting the hell out of here too. So it's just keeping up with the trend. Sad day. Yeah. But I wanted to check out that Indian place, especially when you said it was like a buffet. So that means I could try a bunch of different things. So how much longer before they're actually going to shut down?
Oh, Bombay isn't closing. If you mean Bombay, the place that I went today.
Yeah, I thought that's what Ann's message said.
Oh, that they might close down?
Said that they were moving. Like, not that, you were the they that she was talking about.
Oh, yeah. There's those they, them pronouns messing up everything. Right. Yeah, but yeah, I'm the they that they were talking about.
Okay, it makes sense now. That's why I was like, where are they going?
When you said that, I thought you were talking about me.
Oh, no, I knew where you were going. That's okay. So just fill you in, Ryan. There were some pictures that were posted up on Instagram with they eating some food at this Indian restaurant called Bombay. And the message said something like, last time here before they move, something like that, right? So I was thinking like the restaurant was closing because the owners were moving it somewhere. So I'm responding like, wait a minute, when are they, closing, or where are they going? And Ann had responded and said, well, they're moving to blah, 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 be with their brother. And I was like, okay. I was like, all right.
Yeah, the restaurant wants to be with its brother.
Yeah, so I was like, So I got it now.
On the same page. On the same page.
It's like your friend
So,
Jaden just joined.
oh, what's up, Jaden? Oh no. All right.
And what about you, Ryan? What kind of a week are you?
It's been an interesting week. I'm at my new job at World Market. I'm currently on an Air Force base right now, so it's just a little loud.
Right
Oh
on.
wow.
Yeah. I've just been chilling, reading a lot, trying to educate myself so I can have more context in conversations and I won't get stumped up and feel embarrassed when I apply opinions and contribute different things to different intellectual conversations. So that's what I've been up to lately.
All right. So I think that's a good segue also, actually, where we can start talking about education. And so usually we're taught, go to school, finish school, go to higher education, that'll help you secure a good job, et cetera, et cetera. And my personal take on it is it's kind of like a hustle for a lot of reasons, but just trying to get a grasp on really how important is an actual college education. And so for those out there in chat land, go ahead and you can chime in some of your thoughts about whether or not you think an actual college education is important. And then here amongst ourselves, the three of us, we can kind of give our takes. I'll start first since I brought it up. I'm a big proponent of a college education, but only from the standpoint of having that basis of knowledge. Just like you were saying, Ryan, how you've been doing a lot of reading because you want to be able to hold conversations and make sure that you're giving some valid points, and you maybe done enough research on the topic so you're not giving some surface level responses. So I get that, and that's great. And that's kind of like where I'm going with the education, is to get knowledge or whatnot, but not necessarily that a degree is going to help you really get that much further in life. So I'll just kind of just skim the surface like that. Anything you want to add to that, Ryan? Well, I'm stepping back a little.
I feel like definitely in higher education, like there's this perception that we're supposed to get everything we need from that higher education, especially the institution. Especially because one, we're paying all this money. But I just don't believe that's true. And obviously a lot of us are very familiar with the fact that although you may go to a higher education institution and graduate, that doesn't guarantee you a job out here. And that's just very, very unfortunate. Especially people paying like hundreds of thousands of dollars. But what you're talking about like service level conversations, I don't really feel like, in my experience, although I've only been in the university for a year, I don't feel like I've actually gained a lot from it, or like to be able to have those more in-depth conversations, to be able to like contribute more. Although like obviously I've only been taking core classes, I feel like the money that I've put into this institution should have like some type of like, one, I feel like they should be individually invested in me, but also like I should be receiving the education and information in order to start understanding how to digest like these more advanced conversations. And that's just not what I'm getting, and it's really unfortunate, especially like me finding out after 2 semesters, like, am I gonna get this? And I feel like there's probably a lot of individuals that feel like me, but I think it's like the idea that universities, I feel like, are just access to so much information and just like amazing people and just like all these amazing things. And I feel like it's up to the individual, one, if they want to have those conversations, but also two, if they're going to take advantage of the access. because I mean, we know not a lot of people have the same access that we do, and we should be very, very grateful for that. And we should be the ones to like be hungry for the education and get access and move forward and continue to educate ourselves so we can pass that on to other people that won't have the same opportunities that we do. So that's where I'm going to leave off at.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of touched on this a little bit for my my graduation live stream that Blaze and I did a couple weeks ago, and it was, I think the title of it was "Fuck School," and it's kind of a joke, but also serious because, I mean, one of the things that one of my favorite professors said one time was like, don't let your schooling get in the way of your education. He was basically an advocate for, like, if there is something that's truly like education related and class is getting in the way of it, then then class should be set aside for it. And I don't know. I think thankfully I met the right people around the right time that inspired me to make education my own thing, make it more than just about a job.
Mhm.
But the tendency really is that it's about jobs now. And so, Kelly is in the chat saying that yeah, they think that it's a waste of time, or that, like, at least four-year colleges are often a hustle if you're going there for jobs, basically. If you're going there just to continue learning. See, that's the thing, is like, for me, it's like, you're right, it's access. It's access to so many things I didn't have access to before.
Yeah, and I think
Mhm.
just the whole learning part of it, I mean, there's so many things that you can learn, but also from the social aspect of being involved with other people that may be on the same quest that you're on. But people ask me all the time, like, what are you going to do with your MBA? Like, I'm like, I'm not thinking about going to corporate America. So it's not like I'm going to use the degree to work with school at all. That's not what I'm doing it for. I've just always wanted the business degree. So that's why I pursued it. All my other degrees are in social sciences and, those fields. But the business degree is the one that I've always wanted. So I was like, I'll get my MBA when all this is finished. But I think that the whole premise that this is what you're supposed to do is just, again, part of this social construct. And then what happens is, for most minorities, most of us are going to school doing loans and whatnot as well. And so then that gets us caught up in the debt situation, which means that after we get out, we have to take almost any job that we can, even if it's not in our field. And then again, we're falling into that whole capitalism, liberalism thing all over again, where we're basically, an indentured servant, so to speak. And so trying to find a way to get the education so it's free and accessible to everyone. I can't see who said it, but someone said it in there about making sure that it was accessible to everyone. And I think that's really important, because most of the times people that are part of the majority right now, they have relatives that own businesses and high up executive positions, et cetera. And when those students are graduating school, even if they don't graduate, they usually kind of have an in to some kind of a position or something with some prestige or whatnot. And so they're able to find work after the fact. But usually most people that look like me don't have, a few family members that own businesses or own a farm or are the director of HR at, some place where they can just say, hey, don't worry about if you don't finish school, I got something for you over here. Or if you do finish, I can do this for you. So we just don't have that kind of wink in the gun that can get us in. And so that's one of the reasons why I think that getting the education is kind of like a hustle, because we're going through all this to try to get this degree, and yet someone else can still get it because they got the wink in the gun or the nod or, some kind of a person of privilege to get them in the door. And so education, I think, for at least people of color, should just be more for the actual education. But then it brings me back to that line from, what was that? Good Will Hunting, where he was like, you can get all this for, $1.50 in late charges at the public library, So it's like, we could go and get all those books and get this information ourselves, but we probably won't.
Yeah, I would just throw in there that, oh, well, two things, because Kali said most people I know who have four-year plus degrees are working shit jobs and swimming in debt. Yeah, I got a notification that they expect my first payment of $350 on in July, and it's, yeah, you're not getting that from me.
Anyway, you just graduated in May.
You can't beat capitalism if you don't die in debt.
Wow.
I'm just kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean,
you back inside. Is it quieter inside?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's cooler. It's a little hot outside. I had to run inside. I wasn't trying to interrupt you, so I just muted myself.
Oh, it's all good. All good. I just noticed the scenery changed.
Well, I was like, for some reason, it's not windy. I expected it would be. So, the three people who are on the thumbnail for this video, speaking of education and breaking out of your, maybe the ruts or media echo chambers that you might be in before college, I know of people who, the black activists they're taking seriously, and this kind of just comes with growing up in conservative families or what have you, are people like Jesse Lee Peterson and Candace Owens. The two people who are on the thumbnails for this video, as well as Kanye West wearing a MAGA hat.
That's great. But
and so I had asked Blaze, is this something that you're even familiar with? With your background, were you ever introduced to these people?
And no, I was not. Surprise, surprise, surprise. And it's just amazing, even what type of connections or what type of influence, especially Candace is having, where you see her in congressional hearings, speaking to liberty. By the way, that's where I got programmed as well, Liberty University. So I haven't done much research on them, but now I kind of want to find out what they're all about, because I'm like, man.
They're definitely a libertarian school of some sort.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we were catching a lot of background noise there for a second. I think you're good now.
All right. So let's
see.
Ryan, how about
that again?
Ryan, how about you?
Okay.
I think it's breaking up. Were you familiar? Oh, sorry, Ryan. I think it keeps breaking up.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
We're good?
Yeah.
We're good?
Now we're good.
Okay. In my day, I definitely have been introduced to Black folk like Candace. And it is really troubling. And Black folk like Kanye West, unfortunately. But like with those folk, I've just always been able to like listen to where they come from and why they come from, and that's just been a big part of like who I was raised by. Just like listen to where they come from. If you disagree, you can tell them why and move on. You're not going to change anybody. People believe what they believe because that's how they grew up, or something like just change their perception on what they believe currently, and like I just listen to them because I mean, opinions are valid and we should like note that people, have the freedom to say what they need to say. And she obviously had something to say, so it was good that she got it off her chest. But I don't particularly agree. And like with people like Kanye West, I'm sorry, you're about to get more backup noise. 1 second.
And a real shout out, really quick, Heather, I saw your message, and yeah, that's a definite yes. I'll actually be out here for a couple of more hours, but I was just going to say, let me know if you all are available this evening. I can actually stop by and say hi for a minute, so let me know.
Yeah, but like I was saying, like individuals like Candace and like Kanye are difficult to have conversations with, but it's important to have those conversations. So like you understand that just because you're a part of a particular like you identify racially with one thing doesn't mean everybody in that racial group is gonna like have the same opinion on things. And like as Black folk, we typically believe that if you're ignorant towards it, obviously if you haven't heard any other opinions, you're gonna believe that all Black folk believe the same. That's just not true, as you've seen by what has been put in your thumbnail. And I think it's important to have these conversations. But for me, one, have the conversation, figure out where there's common ground and make a change. You know, I feel like we have too many conversations in some ways, because it's like we're always talking and we're always disagreeing, and we can disagree, that's okay. But what are we going to do to come to a general understanding of each other and move forward, you know? And like the link you sent me with the civil rights leader and Candace and the individual that was leading that debate or discussion, she kept saying like we should have a discussion, we should have a discussion. But it's like, and then she was talking about action, but she was trying to solve it all on that show. And it's like you're not going to solve the problem within the 15 minutes that you have. Like these are issues that we need to sit down and have like conventions and like trainings, and so we can have these like productive discussions that actually go places, that don't just end in the room. And I feel like on her show, I really don't believe that any of them are going to meet up and talk about this. It's for views, it's for content. It's like, and I feel like that's the issue with like the generation like we live in and what we're moving into as well, is like everything's for content and views and followers. Nothing is about real solutions. And like what's developing is all these internet activists.
Mm-hmm.
And like the civil rights lawyer was actually saying, like, although like I believe like she had a valid reason to go to, you know, the congressional committee and speak her piece. Like it'd be awesome if a lot of us had that opportunity, but we just don't. It was turned into like this really dramatic display of just this dramatic display of, it looked like, you know, she was looking for that attention a little bit, and like she got those like those minutes of fame, you know.
Yeah,
And that's
little.
what everything is perceived as now, like especially like on the internet and stuff. Although like I don't believe that that's why she was there, but that's what it looked like. And that's what everything looks like. It looks like everybody's trying to get their 30 minutes of fame. And instead of those 30 minutes of fame, why don't we turn that into years of progress? And it's like, that's where I'm at. Like as an individual that's actually out in the streets and actually doing things, it really does frustrate me when we see things on Fox News that don't leave Fox News. So that's where I'm at with this. When are we going to actually get on the street and start doing what we used to do? Although maybe what we used to do probably won't work now. Maybe it's time to, you know, reevaluate where we're at and try something new, or integrate those old ideas into new forms of action. But we need to do something. Although the internet is a great source, it can't just end there, because it seems like everything just ends there. Everything ends in the hashtag. I just don't see the feet marching on the streets. Like, I don't see that
Right.
the way we used to, you know?
All right. So just kind of filling in a little bit about what's going on here in the chat room. We have someone that says user one, so we don't have an actual identity, but they were asking what were we talking about, and then they're asking if we're Americans. So myself, Theory, and Ryan are Americans, and we are currently in the United States. And we've been just recently talking about Candace Owens, who is a Black person that has a belief that the whole Democratic Party is kind of playing like the martyr, so to speak, and that they're really, trying to make it seem like they want Black people to fail so that they can blame all of the problems for people of color on white people, so to speak. And she had been in some spaces where she had gotten a chance to speak in front of Congress and in front of large audiences and kind of give her spiel, so to speak, and is a Donald Trump supporter. And, she just kind of believes that he's done a lot of good things for the country and for Black people, and that most Black people, think she's off or wrong, and that she's kind of like a traitor, so to speak.
Yeah, she talks about having been like accosted at a restaurant where she was kicked out of the restaurant by anti-fascist protesters. But I think one of the things that is important for background is that she works for Turning Point USA, which is funded by a handful of billionaires who are mostly like profit off of big oil, and who push a pretty conservative line. And, like this is all tightly wound up with PragerU and Ben Shapiro and just all of these sort of these new young people who are usually, so they're always like conservative, but they fall into one of the identity categories that is marginalized. And as a result of that, conservatives kind of uphold them and say, look, well, Milo can't be homophobic because he's gay, and Ben Shapiro can't be anti-Semitic because he's a Jew, and Candace Owens can't be racist because she's Black, and it just goes on down the line, And that's
yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely think the issue with this is when we see individuals of certain minorities, we perceive what they're.
Hold on one sec. I think you put your thumb over the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Oh, I'll go ahead. I don't know. Specifically, when we see Black people speak or individuals of certain minority groups, because they are of smaller groups, especially of racial groups. I know people that aren't familiar with seeing people of color speak their mind, that don't actually spend their time to research people of color and their different points of views on different subjects, not just regarding to their race and the intersections of their race. But like, we often believe that like when someone sees her speak, people are probably going to think that that's how other Black folk think, if they're ignorant to it. And I think that's like probably the biggest issue. So like, I wish we would like publicize other Black folks' opinion and put that on display, because so many educated people of color are talking about this and are talking about these things, but they're not being publicized because it's not a controversial opinion like hers. And that's the issue with the media. I mean, one, because we already know our media and we already know how it portrays people of color, and them showing her this controversial opinion that it doesn't look really well on the Black community. It really doesn't. And she talks about like trying to support and help the Black community and actually talk about issues that affect the Black community in her congressional speech. But like, just her opinion, one, it's valid because everybody's opinion is valid, but it's controversial. So why aren't we publicizing other people that are talking about this matter? Why aren't they getting the same credit? And that's my issue with the media and how it portrays people of color.
Yeah, I think you mentioned too a part about everyone having a right to speak their opinion and their opinions being valid, and that's very accurate. One of the things too is that when she speaks, what's actually happening is she's connecting with more white people than she is still connecting probably with more Black people, because white people for a long time have said, there's no problem here. Like, what are you talking about? Everything is equal, and nothing to worry about here, nothing to see here. And so what that does is that gives her a lot of support and credibility from that side. And then when some of the people of color who may have been listening, that maybe you were kind of like, well, I don't know. I mean, I haven't really had this experience myself personally, because most of the people that they showed in some of the rallies when she was at the White House and all that kind of stuff, or the people that were supporting her, they all seemed like they were professional Black people, dressed in professional attire and things of that nature. So they may not have had some of the same experiences that the average Black person may have had, some experiences with. And so that might be a part of the crowd or the group that she's reaching as well. If she went in the hood and was talking that stuff, they'd probably be like, get out of here. You see what I mean? So it could also be the audience that she's reaching, but it seems that that's where her support is coming from still. So from some class, and that classism again leads right back into this whole system, getting back into this, inequality that's put together.
Definitely. I actually want to touch back on something that Theory said, was basically the individual, and what you're saying, the individuals that she's connected with are, well, one, who she works with, who's funding, who she's employed by, are individuals in the corporate world. And and what you're saying, her supporters are individuals that we perceive as to be in that corporate environment. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, no, I'm just talking to Theory.
Oh.
Are you putting it in the chat?
Yeah, there's 2 parts in there.
Oh, so I kind of forgot what I was saying, but I'll try to remember. But basically what I'm saying, like, in the American system, obviously, and in different systems, politics and money are so connected, and her being supported by these corporate individuals just continue to further and just validate the narrative that, like, money and politics just go hand in hand, especially, like, in America and everything. And that's a big issue because they keep giving her validation. And like you said, like, if she went in the hood, or she went where an average individual that is Black or African American were located, they probably wouldn't have those same opinions, so the individuals that are supporting her, I'm not gonna say that they haven't had the average Black experience, but they're in an environment that isn't typical for Black people in America. And she's being further supported by those individuals. And she's on a high right now. She really is, because she's getting all the support.
Absolutely.
But like I said, the corporate world that she's involved in, and those in the corporate world that are supporting her, are probably the same people that are within our government and bribing our government and just furthering the notion that the democracy here is corrupt with money. And that's just a point I wanted to make.
Yeah, I think that she's definitely on a high right now. And I think that to come out and say, look, the Democratic Party, there's all this talk, but there's no follow through. We even got, a Black president for 8 years, but we didn't see a lot of the changes we wanted to see. We're sick and tired of Democrats telling us that they've got our back. Like I mean, as someone who's more left than Democrat most of the time, I think I can just be like, totally, like, maybe people who see that, need to be told, yeah, you're right. There are ways that, you can, that your issues are tokenized by the Democratic Party a lot of the time and not taken as seriously as they need to be. It doesn't make the Republicans the de facto, like, correct party,
it's not
though.
binary.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the issue there. She's not finding that she is accurately represented, and she's not finding that they're following through with kind of what they're advertising, the Democratic Party. You know, she doesn't feel represented and she doesn't feel spoken for. So she just went to another party, you know? But I think where that ends is individuals like her that have issues with the party, run for that party.
Yeah.
You know, change the system. Become a part of the system so you can change within, you know? And that's an issue. But like I just wanted to touch on what you were saying, like you know, that we had a black president and things didn't get done the way we wanted them to get done. But like something we have to understand is the fact that this country and our political system is based off of racism. Like is our whole system is made to make different minorities fail. And it's like are we just not going to touch on that? The fact that, you know, our president had to make a lot of compromises solely based on the fact that the Republicans those 8 years didn't get what they want. Another 50 to 60-year-old white male that was a misogynist and that was racist. You know, they didn't get that, you know, and the system obviously didn't play in their favor, and they saw that. And I feel like a lot of the reasons why we didn't get to do a lot of things we wanted to do was solely based off of how the system is set up.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the readings that was linked in the description for this video that I got a chance to look at, but I didn't get to finish, was on mass incarceration in the U.S. and the drug war, and how this has been strategically implemented to ghettoize people, you know, and specifically people of color in this country, and to it's rough. And the New Deal, you know, which was like supposed to help everybody, it was really just helping white people. And so one of the things that I'd never really thought about before was that that the New Deal was able to, in a certain sense, blur class divides for white people. But because Black people were not given the New Deal, essentially, those class divides were even more stark, you know, more obvious.
Yeah, starting even with just the redlining part. And a lot of the soldiers that were coming home from the war were thinking like, oh, I'll be able to buy a home. I'll come in, you know, start the American dream right after I come home from the war. And the problem was that they weren't doing these loans in most of the areas that were predominantly for people of color. And so what that did is it caused them to continue to be renters, and then it let most of the whites become homeowners. So right there, even starting from, you know, the 40s or whatnot, people had a head start in wealth creation because they were able to buy property, whereas other people were not. And so that parlaying that, you know, going forward, how many of you out there, regardless of what color you are, how many of you can say that you remember your grandparents owning a house that they bought from way, way, way back when, that they told you they bought for $17,000 or, you know, $15,000 or something like that? Maybe only a select few will be able to remember stuff like that. But the thing is, most people, they don't know about these things because, one, they don't take the time to research and, you know, find out about what's going on. And so this goes back to kind of what you were saying in the beginning of the conversation, Ryan, how you've been doing a lot of reading because you want to be able to engage in these conversations and have a good, solid foundation about what's going on in the conversation, instead of somebody bringing up something and you're like, ooh, I didn't know that, you know? So I actually commend you on that, just furthering your knowledge on that, to be able to get involved in these conversations. Did you want to comment on anything that I said? Okay, go ahead.
Well, and actually my comment's more, well, it does tie in, but there's all this stuff that's going on in the chat. We've been kind of half watching it. Basically, a person was spouting a bunch of apparently Nazi talking points, and they got muted by Callie. Thank you for getting them shut down. If they're a bad faith actor, then that sucks. And if they're serious, that sucks too. All I can say is that if you've got a lot of statistics in your head that are pretty far right leaning and you're interested in other perspectives, make sure to check out Sean, Shaun, Sean's channel and Three Arrows channel, because they spend so much time debunking these bullshit studies or stats about immigration and about white genocide, and these are just Nazi talking points that have been rebranded as new right, issues, but they're not. They're not issues. They're fucking made up issues. So, but one of the things that came up in that conversation, from what I could tell, was Kali was talking about how white people don't experience racism. They can experience prejudice or discrimination, but it's not the same as racism. And I think this is a really important thing to bring up, and maybe you can all speak to it a little bit. But I think it gets at one of the big differences. There's a culture war over what racism even means, and the Candace Owens types will say that racism is nothing more than prejudice or discrimination, and it doesn't matter who it's directed at. Whereas I think that y'all probably subscribe to more nuanced definitions. So I'd be interested in hearing what those are.
Okay. All right. I actually, months ago, probably like 6 or 7 months ago, myself and individuals of a student organization I'm a part of actually had a great opportunity of giving a PowerPoint on racism and how it still affects our institutions and just the world we live in to this day. And there was a renewed definition. And is the individual's name Callie?
Callie was the one who was saying that racism is not the same thing as prejudice.
Yeah, it isn't. They are absolutely right. What I'm the text that I am really familiar with when referring to racism is individuals who have like the power and opportunity to systematically oppress a people or many peoples. And the only way you can systematically oppress a people or many peoples is if you have that power. That power comes in numbers. So the majority is able to do that. The majority made up this racist, historically racist system. They're the only ones that are able to do that. Individuals of the minority that don't have the power to flip the system, because we don't have those numbers and because the system is put against us, we're probably able to have racist ideas or what would maybe considered racist, but I don't think we can act on racism. We can only act through prejudice because we don't have that power in order to pit a system against a people, because we are a minority. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So the majority, individuals who consider themselves white, and whiteness is a social construct, which we probably won't even get to today, but who consider themselves white, who are actually just descendants of European immigrants. Let me just put that out there. They have the power in numbers to act through racism, to apply racism, to be racist. But minorities, because they don't have that power in numbers and because they didn't design the system, can only act through prejudice and have prejudiced thoughts. So that's where I stand on that, because we just don't have the power to systematically oppress people.
Yeah, and I think I'll just kind of add, it's still probably glazing over some of what Ryan is saying, but my whole kind of definition about racism or prejudice or discrimination, I will kind of lump the racism and prejudice kind of together, and then I put discrimination as something separate. And so when I think of racism, I basically say we're all racist. We all have thoughts, and those are the thoughts that fall under prejudice and fall under racism. And so if I see a car driving down the street and I hear loud music, I may assume that it's a certain class of people. Or if I see a car accident I may assume that there was a certain person driving, whether it was a woman, whether it was a person that was Asian, whether it was a car with loud music and thinking there were a bunch of Black people in the car, or whether 20 people got out of a car and I say, oh, wow, bunch of, Latinos or whatever. Those are thoughts that somehow some of us could have had in our minds. And that's what they are. They're just thoughts. Okay. Now, when we act on these thoughts, that's where the discrimination comes in. And that's where having a lot of power really comes into play. Because if I am a person in a position to do some hiring at a job, and a person comes to me and hands me their resume, I can look at their resume and say, oh, okay, thank you. I appreciate you for coming. Have a great day, Tyrone. And as soon as Tyrone walks out the door, I can put his resume in the trash and never give him a second thought. That's where my power comes in the position that I'm in, and I get a chance to affect his life going forward by maybe not giving him that position. And so that's where, the real power comes in. But I just wanted to put it more towards the discrimination part and not just the racism part, just because my own personal beliefs are more that the thoughts can be racist thoughts. Those thoughts can be prejudiced thoughts. And if you just have those thoughts in your head, but you don't actually do anything to interfere with the person's right or ability to move ahead or gain access to resources or, social systems and things like that, then it's kind of like, you just thought about it, but you never did anything about it. Now, hopefully you're not influencing other people to continue that thought process and then doing things to discriminate against people. But I just wanted to kind of draw the distinction that when you're really affecting change in a person's life one way or the other, you need power to be able to do that. And if you're discriminating against a person, that's where it's against the law. It's not against the law to be racist. It's against the law to discriminate. Okay.
Well, and then in terms of human rights, though, and systematic, forms of oppression, I don't know, because I can follow everything you're saying, and I think I could even say all of that to I have a sibling who's into Ben Shapiro right now, and who says, that systemic racism is not a thing, that being colorblind is actually the right thing to do, et cetera, et cetera. And it's kind of this Candace Owens approach as well, that it bases itself on personal responsibility and says, look, the only reason that you think you're oppressed is because you got to take responsibility and work harder. And there's a sense in which it's an internalization of the racism of the system that takes for granted the uphill battle some people are given over others, by ignoring it, either because you've internalized your own oppression or because you're too comfortable in your white privileged world to not have to worry about it. You're able to just say, no, that's not a thing, right? And Bell Hooks says that is one of the signs of white supremacy is people saying that there's no such thing, or that that's not being actively maintained by the structures of our society.
Yeah, it even goes to that, cliche statement that says the greatest trick the devil ever pulled or whatever was making people think that he didn't exist. And that's the same kind of thing here. That's how tight and how crafty this whole thing is about white supremacy, about racism, about some of these social systems being set up this way, is that it's to the point where you can't even find out exactly how it penetrated so much of our social system, how it got so deep into that. And I bet that even if there were 2 people sitting there or 8 people, maybe they were drafting a constitution for a country or whatever it is, even if they had a dream of trying to actually set up such a system, I don't think whoever did this, who really started it, had any clue of how powerful it would be and how it would go on for perpetuity. And so being able to stop it, it's kind of like having a pool full of water, and whatever it is, this this stuff is put inside the water, and there's nothing that we can do about it unless we drain the whole pool. And so maybe until some kind of a nuclear thing happens and civilization starts over in a couple of 100 million years or something like that, then it just might be something else, though. You know what I'm saying? So we still don't really know what's going to happen next. But for the time that we're here, we can try to work on that. And I wanted to ask something about the whole colorblind thing. You know, we all probably have, made the comments about, color blindness is wrong, and you can't say that, there's no such thing as color. You see me, you see color, I get it, and all that. But a lot of times when you are trying to say that color doesn't matter, in that person of color's life, it does matter. And when you tell them that it doesn't matter, what you're saying is everything that you've experienced in your life up until this point doesn't matter. And that's probably one of the things that people that kind of believe that, saying colorblind, I'm colorblind, that's something I would just tell you to kind of search yourselves about and recognize that you're doing that. It'd be the same thing if you were saying something to a woman and you were saying, like, when I look at you, you're just one of the guys, I don't think of you as a woman, I pay you accordingly, or I treat you the same way and all that. But in theory, but I'm bumpy like that. All right. She's still a woman. And so you can't deny the fact that she's a woman because whatever she's experienced to that point, just as I can't deny when I'm talking to a person that's white about whatever the experiences that they've had because they are white. And so we have to still just recognize that we are different, and all of those differences, whether it's sexual orientation or different religions or whatever it is, we have to recognize all the differences and then find ways for us all to coexist.
Yeah. About the color blindness thing, I remember it was my senior year of high school, and obviously, as everyone can tell, race is a big part of my life, obviously. Well, my racial makeup is a big part of my life. And just like how I was raised, I remember my dad made me watch Roots when I was like 8. And after that, it was over. Like, I was just destined. But going back to my senior year of high school, I had a teacher that actually told me, she was introducing herself to the class, and she was like, and just so you know, after saying everything else, she felt the need to say this: I don't see color. And that really troubled me. One, because she spends a lot of time in Africa, and
Wow.
she spends a lot of time. She spends a lot of time in Africa. She's an environmental scientist, and she's helping just improve this village so they can be more sustainable and stuff. So that like really that troubled me. One. And then two, like, she looks directly at me. And then I tell my dad, because in that moment I don't know what to say to her. And my dad tells me that afternoon, he said, Ryan, if anybody ever says that they don't see color, walk out the room because they see color. Basically, he's just implying like they see you, they recognize you, and they'll say something if you just walk out. So they see you. So like, I just think people just not even saying or implying that they don't see color, like, don't even say that. Like, I mean, and if you want to have that conversation, then have that conversation with someone. It's either don't say it at all or ask someone, is your racial makeup, whatever I perceive you to be, is it a big part of your life? Is it one of those many things that you identify with when you introduce yourself? And if it is, then you need to respect that, because the person on the other side most likely will respect your different identities, and if they don't, you just don't need to spend time around them. But yeah, this color blindness, I do think for individuals that specifically identify with what they're racially made up of, it just invalidates their whole existence. So for you to look at me and say you don't see color, I'm just like, okay, then, like, everything I told you I am, everything I believe I am,
every struggle
is nothing is nothing. And for individuals like Shapiro to say the things that they say, it's just like, you're not even recognizing me as a person. And this may be extreme, but just going back to, I feel like when individuals say I don't see color, when invalidating everything that I've ever gone through as a person of color, and just invalidating my existence in general, it just goes back to the idea that not too long ago, you know, an individual like myself, or an individual that identifies as fully Black, was considered like not even a whole person. And as an individual that identifies as female, I wasn't considered anything, you know? So it's just really disrespectful. And I really think it is. There's individuals that identify as white that think certain things are disrespectful that people of color do to them. Well, this is one of the things that are disrespectful if a person of color specifically identifies with the racial makeup. And Blaze, I actually wanted to go back to something that you said. You said the people that wrote up the Constitution may have not have known their impact, or the weight that it would carry in the future. I think that's I validate your opinion, but I don't think that's true. I think they knew exactly what they were doing, but I don't think they knew to what extent, like how much weight it would carry. But I think they knew what they were doing. I think they knew it was sustainable for the time that they were in. And I think they knew it was going to be sustainable even after they died, because those same beliefs and those same things they wrote down on that paper are the same things they were going home and telling their children, are the same things they were going around to dinners with all their wealthy friends and wealthy colleagues and sharing those opinions. The thing about conversation is it carries. And the individuals they were surrounding themselves by were probably individuals that agreed with what they were thinking and what they were writing down on paper. Maybe they didn't understand the weight of it at the time, but I do think they knew it was sustainable for their time.
Kelly said the Constitution was crafted to keep the power in the hands of the wealthy and white.
Yeah, and I think part of that, I was being a little facetious when I said it. I was like, who knows if those 8 people knew that what they were doing, that kind of,
I didn't catch up.
Yeah. But what happens if we really start talking about that, then what that does is that unleashes the floodgates on all those other people to start coming out and saying, no, that's not how this person and that person were thinking, because I was sitting in the same room with them. I knew exactly what they were thinking, right? So that just stirs up a whole nother can of worms. But there's something I want to address that I see kind of going on here in the chat room. First thing, Kali, I would love to come to NC. So tell me what city, because I do have some people in Wilson, and was it Rocky Mount or Rocky Top, and then Raleigh. So we might be able to make that happen. But I'm noticing that user 1 is kind of getting a lot of flack from some of the other people in the chat room. And all I wanted to say was, there was a comment where user 1 said they were proud of some things that their ancestors had done. I think it was about colonization. I'm not sure. Was it colonization?
I think I saw them disavowing it, saying that they do feel some guilt when they think about the horrors done in colonization. But I think that they were saying that they're also proud of some of the things. I wasn't following it too closely.
Okay, so like something like that. And then another person responded, like, how can you be proud about something that was done like before you got here? Well, just relate that to people of color, how I didn't grow up as a slave. I wasn't denied an education. I wasn't told I couldn't learn to read or to write, those types of things. But some of my ancestors persevered through that. And I can be proud of them for standing up and doing what they needed to do to, be human and fight in the struggles or whatnot. So what I wanted to say just for the chat room is that even if a person kind of has a difference of an opinion, if we are butting heads with them or whatnot, then all that really does is make them want to defend their position even more. And so let's try to find a way to give them an opportunity to say what it is that they're trying to say. And then collectively, we can also try to supply facts and education to help, let them have an informed choice. But if we are basically, just butting heads with them, then it's just going to be natural for all of us to defend our position. So even if our beliefs are a little bit different, let's just find a way to get some information to them that they can then kind of look at side by side and, maybe change their opinion on something.
I will just say, though, because Kali said that I should scroll up, that there might be something else going on here that's being missed by us. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I will scroll up and I will look at that in a second. Sorry, I just wanted to say that so you can keep going. But let's just say all of this with an asterisk beside it.
Yeah. I just, just knowing that it just seemed like that user one was, having to defend themselves and whatnot. And it's hard to try to read all of it and be involved in the dialogue or whatnot at the same time. But I wanted everyone else to know that's just watching that may not be in the chat room, just so they can kind of get an understanding of what's going on.
I think one of the things that, I don't know if this is what Kali's getting at or not, but like, just to user one, like, you keep talking about guilt, but I don't know. It feels like the assumption is that you think that we all want you to feel guilty about things. And it's like, nobody wants you to feel guilty. Like, I don't know. That's an unproductive feeling. It doesn't do anything. It gives yourself like even if you were to indulge in guilt, it would just give you a pseudo sense of having done something when you haven't. Because ultimately, like, these aren't things that can be changed with our feelings. These are things that have to be changed with, like, where we direct our attention, where we direct our money, where we direct our votes, and where we direct our ears.
Yeah. And so I'll even put this out here for user one too. If you're experiencing these bouts of guilt or whatnot, I believe then I'm going to assume that you're a person that is not of color, that you're most likely white. And so that means that there's some built-in privileges and things that you have that a person like me doesn't have naturally. So instead of having the guilt, flip it around and ask yourself, what can I do with this privilege that I have to try and make something better? Even if you start on a small scale in your household or in your neighborhood, or the school that you may go to, or the place where you work, and just find out what you can do with some of the privilege that you have to bring some equality to others, So use that as opposed to the guilt. Let the guilt fuel some action on your part that you can try to do something to help others,
Yeah.
Yes.
I wanted to touch on that guilt, but I also wanted to touch on colonization. User one, I also am assuming that you are an individual that identifies as white, or an individual that identifies as descendants of European immigrants. So, why don't we identify what this feeling actually is? So if you had the chance to read Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility, actually Blaze recommended that to me, and it is super amazing. Not only for an individual that identifies as biracial, but I think it's amazing for everyone to start really understanding what white fragility is. And one of the feelings that you're feeling is guilt, and that is actually in the description that Robin actually talks about. Guilt is a feeling of white fragility, and like we're saying, like, it's an unproductive feeling. You need to go out there and do something about it. I mean, you can sit here on your computer, on your phone, and listen to us talk, and just feel guilty and sad, and like you can't do anything about it because you're white. And that's not true. Like, you need to turn this feeling, you need to put the energy you're putting into feeling guilty into actually doing something that's going to make you feel, good about what you're doing, and like what you're doing contributing to the society that we live in, so you don't feel guilty. And no, I'm not talking about tokenizing people of color and minorities. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, go out and educate yourself, one, about colonization, because I definitely have differing views on that, but just on the different things you're feeling guilty about, and maybe you'll start to see that you shouldn't feel guilty, but maybe there's other things that you should be feeling. And I feel like your guilt is kind of actually contributing to the problem and not the solution. It's wasted energy. We need your energy for the bigger cause. You know, we need your energy for something more beautiful, except sitting on a computer or on your phone just talking about how guilty you are. Put that somewhere else, because once that feeling is transformed into something else more productive, it can be really beautiful. And that energy can help someone, can aid someone, can educate someone. So that's where it starts. It starts with you. Pick up a book and figure it out. Transform that feeling, because we need that energy.
And then here's something else that I'll add. Normally, you know, you don't feel guilty about anything or whatnot unless you know that there was something that shouldn't have happened there, you know, whether it's you did it or whether or not you saw it happen to someone else, but you know, like, wow, something's not wrong. And you may associate with that and take on a part of that guilt if you resemble those so-called perpetrators. And so by default, that just kind of, you know, happens. So we feel guilty about something. If, you know, this is all stereotypical stuff I'm saying, but if I was to see some black on black crime, I might feel guilty because I'm like, man, you know, doing it again, right? I'll have some remorse or whatnot, even though I didn't do it personally, but, you know, I'm feeling guilty about it because I know that that's going to make a statistic somewhere. There's going to be people talking about it, and it's going to somehow reflect to me, you know, some kind of way. So think about that with the guilt. But the part that I want to bring up is for all of you out there who are white. I bring up this a lot of times when we have our meetings here on campus and whatnot, is that most of the time when the white people show up, it's the same group of white people. Okay. Rarely do I see their spouse, their significant other, their child, their coworker come along with them, unless their coworker works with them here at the school and they're, you know, a part of the group that hits up all of these meetings and it's the same group of people. One of the things that I think is most difficult for white people is to talk about this with other white people, because they then wind up being the person that's isolated and they're trying to break down all these walls of privilege and bring in this understanding to the other people that look like them. And now they're part of a minority. And then when they start talking about that with these other people, they're the ones that are starting to get shut down. So I think that that's really a difficult thing for white people to do, to be able to have those conversations with other white people. So for you in the chat room, regardless of what you all might be talking about right now, but can you give us some comments if you've, you know, ever thought about that, the way I'm saying that, about the difficulty it is if you're white to be able to talk to other white people about race?
While we wait for any of those kind of comments, I should just say from a sort of MC position that we've got about 8 minutes left to wrap this down. So
You could probably go to 5. The library's open.
I mean, they're not going to kick us out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
So at least another 20 minutes. Okay. All right. Blaze just bought us an extra 12 minutes.
Yeah.
So user one was saying, oh, like I felt some guilt when I first heard about this thing. I'm not, you know, but whatever. What Blaze's point and Ryan's points apply to whoever they speak to at this point. So user one, it could be user 2 or 3 or 5. But anyway, I was gonna say that, you know, I for me, I just feel like resentment, and I try not to, because that's not a healthy feeling to just go around feeling all the time. But I do resent the fact that I live in the heart of an empire, and I do resent the fact that that so much of my life world is produced by capitalism. I resent the fact that a lot of things I grew up loving are produced just to continue brainwashing us. Like, you know, how films are all you know, a lot basically every action film is funded by the military. Finding out that almost everything I ever loved or identified with was produced by capitalism, which was, a result of colonialism. And I just resent the fact that that there's a certain sense in which a lot of the things I've enjoyed were at other people's expenses, not like immediately, but kind of obscured through the chain of production. And that, at the very base of all of everything we're talking about, there is a system of production and consumption of people who are valued on nothing more than their labor power that can be exploited. And that sucks. The state is a tyrant, and capitalism is a monster, and I've been a beneficiary of it in a lot of ways. So yeah. Anyway, I feel some resentment. It's like, but that's not a healthy either. It's like, it's not healthy to go around feeling guilty or resentful. Just all we can do is like try to put our energies into more productive things that will try to make it better.
That is very true. I agree.
And I have a question too. So I'm looking like, what is that? The Kroivik, is that right?
The Kroivik, yeah.
Okay. So if I'm saying it right, the Kroivik, some comments that you have on there saying that you're Slavic and that you don't consider yourself as white. Now, a lot of times what really matters is how other people perceive you, because they're going to treat you accordingly. And so I could tell you that I'm 100% Caucasian and you may not believe me, but if I go out into the world and if I'm 100% Caucasian, and if people treat me black because I look like I'm black, then it really doesn't matter what I am, because I'm going to be treated accordingly based on what others think that I am. And so that's kind of important too. So not saying that there's anything wrong with you saying like, hey, I'm Slavic, I recognize who I am and I'm not white or da-da-da-da-da-da. But there's a lot of the privileges that come with having a certain skin complexion. And those people generally are, going to experience some type of favor throughout their life, regardless of whether or not they are Irish or Native or Australian or German or South African, whatever it is, they're going to experience a little bit of favor on that.
Yeah, they say they don't consider themselves as white as a Western European would.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason was talking about discrimination against Slavic people by Nazis historically and things like that. So it's like if you still appear white and then you're in a society built for people who appear white, then obviously you're going to have some privileges there. But I mean, yeah, who knows what it's like to be a Slavic person, traveling through Germany, and what you might, that there might be, very unique forms of prejudice at work there that, is way beyond anything I could understand.
And you might come here to Boise, Idaho, and you might feel like you're in utopia. Like, this is great. Now, of course, I don't know what your complexion is, but you could come here and be like, hey, now I can support this. This benefits everything I'm trying to do here. I got easy access to education. I'm getting invited to everything, which is really funny because when I walk down the quad, never once in my whole career here as a student have I ever been pulled over by any of the groups being offered any kind of a flyer or anything. You know what I mean?
I would have given you one, I swear. I never
you don't see color, no, right?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
What about you, Ryan? I know you went to Boise State for a while. Did you ever get propositioned by any of the people out tabling in the quad?
No. I mean, here and there'll probably be groups that are pushing more liberal ideas, and they see me and they'll be like, yeah, here you go. I mean, in my time on this earth, specifically when I'm approached by a person that identifies as white, it's because they're comfortable with the color of my skin. It's because they don't know what I am. yes, I follow on the lighter side of the colorism scale, and I say this a lot because a lot of white folk are very comfortable with me. They'll approach me and there's nothing about it. But if you approach a friend of mine that I have that is of a darker skin tone, they don't approach her because I don't know if they don't know how to interact with her. I don't know what it is, but white folk are more comfortable with me because they associate our skin colors. So when I am approached, it is because of that. And sometimes it isn't. Some people are just like, "Hey, what's up? Do you want this flyer?" But a lot of the groups that are heavily represented with individuals that are white, they come up to me because they feel comfortable with me because I look white. Although if I didn't have dreads and I was like I used to be and I would like straighten my hair and do things, people really didn't know. And then that question of what are you, which is very disrespectful, would happen all the time. What are you talking about? I'm American. What are you?
Me.
So that's my experience at Boise State. Yes, but things like sororities, they don't come up to me. One, because they know a lot of them probably have seen some of the projects that I've done on campus, some of the speaking things I've done on campus. I've actually showed up to some of the things the sororities have done and, post some of my concerns, especially with diversity, inclusion, and getting more people of color to be represented in those groups. So some of them they just don't want to have that conversation. So I'm not really approached by those groups, but other groups, yeah, here and there. But because it's a predominantly white institution, I'm gonna be approached most likely by white folk. But it's not often, and I can tell you that, especially when I'm wearing my ankh or my Afro pick earrings, they definitely won't approach me. So, yeah.
I was just gonna say that the separation between blacks and whites on this campus are not necessarily coming from the people of color. And so when we were out tabling on the quad to bring, awareness to bringing the Black fraternity and sorority, we were reaching out, trying to get interest from anyone. And it seems that when the other groups are out tabling and doing whatever it is that they're doing, they don't necessarily solicit our interest in it. And again, that's something that probably just furthers some of this segregation. And if they don't feel comfortable reaching out to us, hand us a flyer to tell us about a party, to invite us to join a sorority or a fraternity, then how are things going to, get a little bit better if the separation is just being, perpetrated further? You know what I mean? So we're friendly. I guarantee you that. We like having fun, and we like parties, and we like groups, and, history and culture and art and all that stuff as well. So, reach out, say hi, right?
Yeah.
There's this whole side conversation going on about Slavs, and some people being like, I've seen this kind of discrimination you're talking about. My cousin got arrested for stuff involved with this, blah, blah, blah. So there's that. I'm just acknowledging that you've been seen with that conversation. And the one thing about Slavic accents are awesome. The joke about coming here and then being like, oh, well, this is actually doors just opening. It's like, think about it. If Slavoj Žižek can rock star to fame, like with all of the tics and idiosyncrasies, that accent's so endearing. So I don't know. I feel like the problem though is that then people are going to like you because you're that person, right? Which is a whole other form of discrimination. You're going to find people want you for your accent and not for what you're saying. which is totally true with Slavoj Žižek as well. People aren't listening to what he's saying half the time.
And you can't hide the accent. But just imagine if your picture was on a resume, or a picture was on a LinkedIn page or something like that, and someone is looking at that, they don't hear the accent yet. So you still may get the call for an interview, whereas another person may not, just throwing it out there. Do they have LinkedIn over there in your country? Just wondering. Thought about that.
Did you ask? Sorry, I was reading.
For Mr. Kroivik.
Oh, yeah. You were asking about LinkedIn?
If they had LinkedIn in their country.
That's a great question. Do we have LinkedIn still in this country? I wasn't aware.
Yeah.
That's right. Oh, you studied business, so you actually probably use your LinkedIn.
Yeah, Microsoft.
Yeah. Well, you've got business smarts. Maybe I should listen to you on these things and actually set mine up. But when I tried to set one of those up, because I was looking for a job at one point, gosh, the amount of spam that they blew me up with so fast, and all of these weird contacts I suddenly had with all these people I did not want to associate with.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like Facebook. Culture shock. It's like, I wish you could just turn off the setting where you're being recommended to other people on Facebook. That is so garbage. I do not. There's a lot of people, I'm not friends with them. I'm not trying to be friends with them. Stop recommending me to them. I don't want them seeing my face, and I don't want to see their face. But Facebook, everyone's got to be there together. No. So, and the Kroivik said, also, I'm not saying this because of oppression Olympics, the whole thing about being Slavic and all that. Just wanted to say that oppression works in many ways. Solidarity with Black community. Gotcha.
All right. Yeah, and Mr. Kroivik, the question was, do you have LinkedIn in your country? Because I was making a comment about being just a picture only, where the accent wasn't coming into play. The perception that you are white could still get an interview where maybe another person might not get the interview. So that's what my question was. Is there LinkedIn in your country? I was just kind of asking about that.
And if you're not familiar with that, it's a social media site. It's spelled linked and then N-I-N. Anyway, also Blaze's name is spelled with an exclamation point. Just in case anyone, because the Kroivik was saying Blaze's name and then Kali spelled it correctly. So I just wanted to
way to represent, Kali. Just like I got your name right.
Exactly. Yeah, I know, Ryan, you missed it. The last time we did one of these together, I spent a ridiculous amount of time trying to say Kali's name correctly, because it was like
Kali.
I was like Kali, and it's like no, and it's like Kali. No. Anyway,
till I eventually said like cauliflower,
and now Kali, exactly, and got it ever since then.
All right, let's see. Any last stuff in here?
Yeah. 2 minutes left. Who wants to say something? Ryan, do you have any closing thoughts?
I think, I'm just going to say what I was saying. Starts with, productive conversation, validating everyone's opinion, but also not just leaving it in a social media, in social media and or the internet. Not just leaving the conversation there, but bringing it out and actually becoming a part of the change, and not just being a social media or internet activist. Actually get out there and be a part of something, be the change you want to see. I know it's a cliche quote, but it's true. So do that. Don't just be a social media activist. Sometimes we have to get off the computer and get out there, but the computer is also a really, really good tool in order to get out there. So it's just that balance.
And if you're like Kali and you can't just get out because you don't have access for various reasons, then
there's different ways,
Yeah, no. Yeah. I just want to throw that out there because I know that Kali's housebound, and it's just like the work that you do though is not just passive consumption of entertainment, Kali. You do a lot to build community, and so really appreciate that. But yeah, totally though. It's just a constant reminder. that I think we all need to hear, because it's really I mean, these platforms online like Twitter and Facebook, they give us the feeling of having done community for a second, or having done an activism for a second, when we didn't do anything and nothing changed.
And definitely access looks different for everyone. So if you're an individual that can get out there, then that's what you do. But if you're an individual that, you know, uses that tool, the internet, as a way of creating that community and creating that change, that's what you do, because, you know, that's one of your options, or even your only option. So access is different for everyone, and use it the way you use it. But like Theory was saying, don't just be an activist for a second. Don't just feel that community for a second and feel like you contributed for a second, you know, make this consistent.
Yeah, and try to find a way to just reach out to someone that's different than you, whether it's a different religion, different sexual orientation, different skin color, different philosophical beliefs, whatever it is. Because until you start interacting with people that are different, all this stuff that you're really doing or saying that you want to do doesn't really mean much, because you have to be included. So invite someone out for coffee, or ask a coworker that's, you know, new or different to, you know, sit down and have lunch or something. Maybe you can bring the type of lunch that you would normally eat, and then the next time they can bring the lunch that they would normally eat. But you have to get the dialogue started with someone that's different than you. And until we all start doing that, I mean, we really aren't going to be able to grow at all. I mean, you can look at Dave and I, you can see that we look different. And so by us interacting, we can learn a little bit more about each other and each other's experiences. And that will then help strengthen our understanding of each other and our perspectives. And then we can actually be better friends. And so you can do the same thing with the person that you're just now meeting, or someone that you've known for the whole time you've worked at that place, and you never had a conversation with them other than just hi, bye, and good morning. But if they were the same color as you, or they were the same beliefs as you, you may have had more interaction with them. So you don't have to ask yourself why, just go out and do something about it that's a little different. And then before I shut up, there will be a blog coming out called Hot Sauce, No Honey. And the premise of that is, when you start talking about race, usually what happens is people of color are told, we have to be careful how we approach white people with this. We have to be sensitive. And that whole saying about you attract more bees with honey than you do vinegar. Well, when I generally talk about race, and Ryan's been in some spaces where I've talked about race, the way I approach is that sometimes I talk and I give a little bit of honey. Sometimes I talk and I give a little bit of vinegar. And sometimes I talk and I give some hot sauce. So this particular blog is hotsaucenohoney.com. It's not up yet, but the landing page will be up pretty soon as well. But basically, it's just going to be straight up talk about race with no chaser. So there won't be any punches pulled, or we're not trying to be sensitive to any particular, you know, majority group. I'm just going to give it to you straight. And that's where the hot sauce, no honey comes in. So make sure you keep an eye on that. And hopefully within the next week, I'll have a landing page up so that it'll let you know exactly when it'll go live.
Awesome.
Awesome, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining. This was a really special opportunity for me to learn from you both, and from people in the chat as well. So I really appreciate all the participation. Speaking of new people and getting outside of comfort zones, you're all new to Ryan, I think, and a few of you are new to these at all, I think. There were a couple of names that are new to me, and so thanks for stopping by. It was great having you. Make sure to subscribe to this channel, which is Theory Plea, but also to Blazing Theory, which is where some content that we do together goes that doesn't go up on this channel. So like typically the stuff that goes up on my channel is just mine, but I do these live streams every once in a while, just to kind of like build participation and involvement. Hopefully we're going to figure out a way to do multicasting. The thing is like right now, if we were to do this live stream only from Blazing Theory. There's only like 22 subscribers or 50 subscribers, so like not a lot of people get notified. So like off this one, we're able to get more people. But if you're into this kind of content, we need the encouragement. Please subscribe. So
Sweet.
Blazing Theory, also on Instagram. So
Don't forget.
If anybody was interested in what I was saying, I post a lot of stuff on my Twitter and just a little bit on my Instagram. You can find both of those accounts at RYMBANKS. That's about it. Hopefully you'll be getting more content from me on their page. Hopefully we'll have more collaborations in the future, talk about different subjects. And I just want to thank you both, Theory and Blaze, for having me today, and all the amazing individuals that were active in the comment section. That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. All right, take care. Have a good night.
Goodbye.
Bye.